What's up, guys? So I got a question on YouTube from HNCA24 a couple days ago. He said, preface, never had the opportunity to wrestle when I was younger. How do I prevent injuries / weigh the pros and cons of trying to start now in my mid-30s versus younger people? I got work tomorrow. Can't really risk a debilitating injury for a fun sport. So I guess essentially he's asking, how do I implement some wrestling into my training, assuming he does jiu-jitsu, without putting as much risk at injury? So first, I want to say this, and I'm on a seminar tour right now in Canada, and I've been teaching a lot of ankle picks and duck unders. This includes with people who are much older than you. You didn't put your name, so again, we'll call you Bob. Bob, I mean, there were 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, and by the end of the seminar, they were able to do ankle picks and duck unders without getting hurt at all. And I think the biggest issue here is that with social media, injury risk for wrestling is often oversold. The biggest risk from injuries come from being lazy, meaning you have bad form, you're rushing stuff, or being exhausted, meaning you're trying to wrestle while you're extremely tired, which is not good. Of course, accidents happen, but accidents happen when you do arm bars. Accidents happen when you do heel hooks. Accidents happen when you're playing half guard. One of my friends was playing half guard knee shield and his knee popped because his partner tried to body lock pass him. Accidents happen. The injury risk for wrestling is so oversold and such a tired thing. And I think 90% of the reason is that most people will go try to wrestle. They'll realize they get a little tired doing it and they'll be like, you know what? I'm not gonna do this. This is too hard. And they will end up coping with the fact that it's too hard by saying it's a risk of injury. If you do jiu-jitsu, you're consistently at a risk of injury. You can say whatever you want, but anything that you say about takedowns will apply to stuff like passing or to specific submissions. So 90% of the time, it's a really big cope and a really big excuse. And I don't say this out of ignorance. I've literally done over 100 wrestling for jiu-jitsu seminars now. I'm super grateful. I'm super blessed. I'm super lucky. Every single time, I've met thousands of people. This isn't just the internet. I've met thousands of people who have said to me, wow, wrestling's a lot easier than I thought it would be after this seminar, right? Because you're just not taught how to do it safely, right? Oftentimes, the wrestling coaches or the instructors at jiu-jitsu gyms that try to teach wrestling, they don't know anything about actually teaching wrestling and making people feel safe while wrestling. And it's a lot more controlled than you often think. Again, I always preface it with, of course, there are accidents that are going to happen. That's any sport. So just want to say, if you want to wrestle, you should wrestle. Now, we'll talk about some preventative things and some ways to look at this. Obvious number one is lift weights. And when I think about lifting weights, like the big things that I really like to focus on for me is my legs and my core. Of course, your back is important too, and your chest is important. But your legs and your core, you really want to have a really strong core. That's going to help prevent back injuries. Funny enough, I know. Same likewise with your legs. You want to have really strong hamstrings, really strong quads, and then your knees are going to feel pretty strong. I always make the joke that my knees hurt. They don't really hurt too bad, right? Obviously, sometimes they're beat up more and more, but 90% of the time that's because of actually jiu-jitsu or just like overtraining, like rolling too much. But lifting really does help. It's just building armor around your body. I've talked about it so many times on this channel. If you lift consistently 2 to 3 times a week, hire a professional. I work with a guy named Eli Coffey. You guys can look him up. He's a Team Bionic guy, so it's pretty easy to find him. But you don't have to work with Eli. Find someone who's a professional, not just some random dude on YouTube, right? Like me. Find a professional who helps people lift and helps people build up their body consistently, who has a good resume. Get a good workout plan for 2 to 3 days a week and tell them what you're trying to do. You're trying to focus on injury prevention, and I swear it's going to make the world of a difference. Next is drilling, right? Of course, again, I'm a guy who loves the ecological approach to LA. I think it's fun, but I also believe in drilling. Drill, not to exhaustion, but for understanding and reps. You're not a college wrestler. You're never going to be a college wrestler. Shit, I'm not a college wrestler anymore, right? So I'm not training like I was. So, and I only wrestled in the NAI. I didn't even wrestle Division 1, and it was still drilling the way that we drilled in the NAI is still too hard, right? We overtrained. When you're thinking about doing wrestling and practicing your reps, a lot of people immediately jump to, oh, I got shown a technique once and then I'm gonna go try it on live and it doesn't work and now I'm hurt. I think it's really good to take your time to drill and then do situational rounds. When I say situational, I don't necessarily mean just start in like a single leg and then fight from there. I mean like your goal is like getting your partner to give you different reactions. Like, hey, when I shoot the single leg, try to push my head down. Hey, when I shoot the single leg, try to unlock my hands. Like stuff like that. Like very, very specific. Situational is not just starting the single leg and hope for the best, but lots of drilling, lots of situational. Get really comfortable in the isolated positions first, And then, of course, you can start to practice it in live. And with different takedowns, these situations are going to change. You got to be creative. I'm not your dad. I'm not your mom. I'm not your coach. So you're going to have to take some time and use a little bit of that brain power. But when you drill your takedowns consistently, and then you do a lot of situations in them, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable in live rounds, and you're going to get hurt a lot less, right? Also, you're going to be defended against a lot less because you're just going to feel sharp. Next, big mistake that I see people make is they don't warm their legs up before they do takedowns. I've made this mistake at competition, right? Where sometimes I'm just being a little bit lazy and I forget to warm up, and then those are like the matches where I don't look the same in that match as I may have looked in another match, because honestly my legs weren't as warm, so now I'm just sitting there hand fighting a lot. I've done this a lot in jiu-jitsu matches. It's kind of idiotic, and I know I'm wrong, I know I'm bad, I know I didn't do good, but I'm not perfect. I'm just human too, right? And I get lazy sometimes. But I always notice my best performances as far as wrestling performances go, and I mean wrestling as in stand up, whether I'm in jiu-jitsu or collegiate wrestling, is when I put a huge emphasis on warming my legs up. Lungs warm up too, of course, but when your legs are warmed up, for one, you're gonna just be safer, right? You're gonna get less chance of injury. You're just oiling up, the machine. And then two, you're activating those little muscles. You're ready to explode. You're ready to level change, and so on. Next, I'll say play a takedown game based around upper body tie-ups like underhooks, front headlocks, arm drags, and hand fighting, right? Of course, there are so many more ways to do upper body takedowns than what I just said. You have Russian ties, you have over ties, etc., etc. I don't care what you do. Any of the, just focus on lots of upper body takedowns, and try to just use YouTube research. Or if you're like tired of searching YouTube and you're just like, man, I want something that like tells me exactly what to do, I have an instructional called Takedowns for Older Grapplers. It's all underhook takedowns. It's all upper body takedowns with 0 shots. So if you're looking for that, you can go to brandonreed3x.com/store or check out the link in the description below to get my Takedown for Older Grappler underhook takedown instructional. And if you don't get it, I don't care. It's fine. Go ahead, go on YouTube, find some upper body takedowns where you don't have to shoot, but put a heavy emphasis on upper body takedowns. Next and last is don't overdo it. If you're just a BJJ grappler, which I assume you are, most training should be jiu-jitsu, right? I get asked in a Q&A, do I see myself more as a wrestler now or a jiu-jitsu guy? I've been doing jiu-jitsu exclusively for 4 years. I'm like, I'm a jiu-jitsu guy, right? 9 out of 10 times I'm doing jiu-jitsu, right? So I limit, and this is me being someone who's a little bit more experienced, right? So maybe you should do a little bit more volume, I don't know. But for me and my own personal experience, because that's all I can talk about, right, is I limit my wrestling to about 1 time a week. Now, in live training, I'll do a little bit more wrestling depending on if I'm coming up to a competition. But when it actually comes to going and training takedowns, usually I feel like 1 time a week is fine, especially if you're older and you're like, I'm going to be doing jiu-jitsu for the rest of my life. In 10 years, if you do once a week, that's going to be a lot more if you did 10 years and didn't ever do any wrestling, right? So the less wrestling you do, the less, the more you're going to minimize any potential injuries from wrestling. But I don't think wrestling should be obsolete. Obviously, as always, I believe in a full jiu-jitsu game. 90% of my matches, actually, I'm lying, because in my weight class, dudes like to squabble on the feet. But in most matches, people are going to pull guard. So you also have to say, how important is wrestling truly to my game? I think it's important. I think you should not neglect being a well-rounded grappler. Andre Galvao just had a post recently. I'll show it right here, right, where he talks about like, you got to be a well-rounded grappler. You have to be able to play takedowns. You got to be able to play off your back. But the number one thing that people neglect in jiu-jitsu is takedowns, because again, we're lazy. We're humans. We're naturally lazy, and we're like, what's the easiest thing to do, right? But yeah, those are my pieces of advice, right? Lift weights, focus on legs and core, drill not to exhaustion, just enough for understanding and reps. Warm your legs up hard before you do takedowns. Play a takedown game based around upper tie-ups like underhooks, front headlocks, arm drags, and hand fighting. Don't overdo it. Really manage your training and try to mitigate the risk. If you're just a grappler, focus on grappling. Mostly by grappling, I mean submission grappling. I would say max twice a week wrestling, once a week if you're constrained with time. I don't know those details about your life. You didn't really say. But hopefully you guys found that video helpful. I really love to see that. I'm loving to see that like there's this trend of wrestling and jiu-jitsu right now, and I think it's really cool, and I hope to see more wrestlers come to jiu-jitsu and take in the jiu-jitsu lifestyle and be like, I'm not just a wrestler, I'm a jiu-jitsu person. I think that's super beautiful too. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you made it this far, you know, I'm gonna probably answer you, right? Be as specific as possible. The best comments or the best questions, what I think are the best, are gonna get answered for sure. And if I've seen you guys at seminars recently, thank you so much. It was awesome. I'm about to finish up the first half of my second Canadian seminar tour here in British Columbia. For some reason, if you guys cannot come out to any of my seminars, it just is what it is. You guys can find me on Patreon at Wrestling for Dummies. You guys will see it popping up right here. And there I post like weekly classes, etc., seminar footage, seminar Q&As, and so on. Or if you just want like some in-depth specific techniques, I have 9 instructionals out right now at brandonreed3x.com/store. You guys will see the instructionals like rolling through right here or whatever. And I have a new instructional that's about to come out. It's my first instructional on takedown defense. It's called Hips Don't Lie. You know, Shakira, right? Because of head, hands, and hips defense. If you're a wrestler, you understand exactly what it means, how important the hips are to defend takedowns. And my goal with this new instructional that's going to come out in I don't know, 5-6 weeks, still not sure. I'm really working on the process, but my goal is to really help you attack those pain points when it comes to wrestling on the feet. You don't have to be the best wrestler to stop the best wrestler from doing takedowns on you. And a lot of us top players, we're forced on bottom when we don't want to be. And I think this instructional is going to help you get on top and stay on top when you're facing a wrestler who's even more experienced than you. Other than that, guys, sorry for the long-winded rant. I'll talk to you next time.